Hello and welcome. My name is Neflarian Shadowflame, and I'll be your host for this video. Today we're going to be going over the new PvP mode for Final Fantasy XIV, Crystalline Conflict. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to at least get started, so let's get into it. So what is Crystalline Conflict? Well, Crystalline Conflict is a game of reverse tug-of-war, with two teams of 5 players facing off each other in a single match with a 5-minute time limit. If you've played Overwatch or Team Fortress 2, you are probably familiar with the game type already. So as my description implies, the goal of Crystalline Conflict is to push an object, in this case a crystal, from the middle of the map, down the path into the enemy's goal. The first team to push the crystal into the enemy goal wins the match, but for the first 30 seconds of every match, the crystal will be locked in place and unable to move. To push the crystal, one team member from either team needs to enter the circle underneath it. Multiple team members being in the circle do not increase the rate of speed at which the crystal moves along the path. That being the case, it only takes a single member of the opposing team being in the circle as well for the crystal to become contested and stop all progress in either direction. This means that having more members of your team in the circle than the other team will not move the crystal. Now let's move on and talk about the information displayed via your heads-up display. The first thing that you should take note of is that regardless of whether you're on Astra or Umbra, your team information will always appear to be blue, and the enemy team will always appear to be red. As the crystal moves in one direction or the other, its current location will be displayed on your minimap. You can also see the location of your teammates, as well as anyone from the enemy team who is currently engaged in combat. The location of the crystal will also be displayed on the progress bar at the top of the screen. The progress bar has a lot of other useful information, so let's go over those. Let's start with the percentages there at the top. The team that is pushing will have their percentage increase as the crystal moves into their enemy's base. Your team's percentage will be located next to your team name. Astra is always on the left, and Umbra is always on the right. This percentage will increase until it reaches 50%, where the pushing team will need to stand on the crystal for a short period of time to unlock the ability to push it farther. The time remaining until further progress is unlocked is located on the bar under the enemy team's progress percentage. Once this reaches 100%, progress is unlocked. Once unlocked, the pushing team will be able to progress the final 50% into the enemy goal, and the lock will remain open for the remainder of the match, even if they are pushed back behind it. If one team pushes the other team out of the circle and gains control of the crystal, their percentage will not decrease as it indicates the farthest point each team has gotten so far. If a team regains control of the crystal and begins to push once more, their percentage will not begin to increase again until after they pass the furthest point they've achieved in the match thus far. Beneath the percentage indicators is a progress bar that fills as the crystal moves. As Team Astra pushes the crystal, the bar will fill up Team Umbra's side and vice versa. This bar, like the percentages, will fill to the maximum point a team manages to push. If they are pushed back, the bar will not fill anymore until they progress past their furthest point. Also on the progress bar, you may notice a set of red and blue squares. The smaller squares in the middle of the bar represent the halfway point to either team's goal, while the larger squares represent their respective goals. Finally, the diamond indicating the current location of the crystal has more information than just its location. The diamond will change color depending on who is controlling it. It can either be blue for your team, red for the enemy team, gold for uncontrolled, purple for contested, or white for locked. Also, there can be numbers on the diamond that indicate how many players from each team are currently standing in the circle. Towards the start of this video, I mentioned a 5-minute time limit, so let's go over what happens if the time limit is reached. If neither team manages to push the crystal all the way into the enemy goal within the time limit, the match will enter overtime. When overtime starts, the crystal will become uncontrollable for a few seconds to allow the team that has currently made the least amount of progress a chance to move into the circle. If that team fails to have anyone in the circle for a period of a few seconds at any point from then on, the match is awarded to the other team. If that team manages to gain control of the crystal, they only need to push it 0.1% farther than the other team's maximum progress to win. Out of the numerous matches I've played, I've gotten a draw twice, so it is possible to end a match in a draw, but I'm still not 100% certain on all the factors that go into getting one. As of the time of this recording, there are currently only 3 maps available for Crystalline Conflict: the Palestra, the Volcanic Heart, and Cloud 9. Currently, all 3 of these maps rotate to the next map every 90 minutes in the order of Palestra, followed by Volcanic Heart, then Cloud 9, and back to Palestra again. All 3 of these maps have green potion bottles in specific locations, and if you run over them, you'll instantly have your 30,000 HP restored. If you are, however, at max health already and try to run over these potions, you will not be able to pick them up. Beyond that, all 3 maps not only have unique layouts, but have unique variations to them. Palestra is the most straightforward of the 3, in that it doesn't have a gimmick. This makes Palestra just a brawl to see who the better team is. That said, on the north and south side of the map, near each team's goal is a little road that if moved onto will increase your movement speed dramatically while you're on it. This makes for a quick way to get from your team's goal to the other team's halfway point quickly, and vice versa, or to help with a quick escape. Volcanic Heart has a speed road as well, that leads from the center of the map to either team's halfway point. Also, randomly at least once a match, a 15-second timer will appear and begin to count down. When the timer reaches 0, the sky will darken with a red glow, and AoE circles will begin to appear at different locations throughout the map. Now if you stand in the AoE circles, not only will they damage you, but after they explode, they will spawn an untargetable bomb lane, which will then explode in a cross-shaped pattern. Standing in these AoEs will do massive damage to you, but if you use guard, you can reduce the damage you would take dramatically. After each bomb lane explodes, it will leave behind an orb. Running through these orbs will give you a damage increase buff for 30 seconds that stacks for each orb that you run through. Any orbs not collected after a short period of time will despawn. Cloud 9, by contrast to the other 2 maps, does not have a speed road you can move freely on. Instead, there are air currents that can be ridden by standing on one of the pads. Each team has a pad that moves from their spawn to the center of the map, and there are 2 more pads that lead from the center of the map to either team's halfway marker. These pads are either active or inactive depending on where the crystal is currently located, and you can tell which ones are active by the green glow. If the crystal is between your goal and your halfway marker, both pads closest to your spawn will be inactive, and both pads closest to the other team will be active. Conversely, if the crystal is between your enemy's goal and their halfway mark, the 2 pads closest to your spawn will be active, and the 2 closest to the enemy team will be inactive. And finally, if the crystal is between both halfway markers, the pads closest to both team spawns will be active, but the pads in the center of the map will be inactive. Now for Cloud 9, instead of exploding bombs, at least once a match, the wind will pick up and little yellow chocobo circles will appear on the ground in 4 locations and begin to slowly move around. When they spawn, a 20-second timer will also appear on the screen. As the timer counts down, the chocobo circles will begin to move faster and faster until they stop just a few seconds before 0. When the timer reaches 0, anyone not in their spawn point will be thrown into the air and take 30,000 fall damage upon hitting the ground. This can be prevented by using guard just before the wind throws you into the air. If, however, you manage to stand in the center of one of the chocobo circles when the knockup occurs, you'll get a buff that prevents the fall damage as well as increasing your movement speed and attack speed for 30 seconds. Now, you've probably noticed that I've mentioned using guard a couple times, and you're wondering what that is. Well, with the way PvP has been redesigned in patch 6.1, all jobs have the same 5 utility abilities on top of their own PvP kits, as well as their own unique limit breaks. I won't be going over the limit breaks or other class abilities in this video, but I will be going over the utility abilities that everyone has. First, we're going to start with guard. Guard is a defensive ability with a 30-second cooldown that reduces the amount of damage you take by 90% for 5 seconds, as well as granting you immunity to stun, heavy, bind, silence, half asleep, sweep, deep freeze, knockback, and draw-on effects. The drawback here is that it also reduces your movement speed by 50%, and you can't use any other actions or abilities while guard is active or it will deactivate early. Next we have Recuperate, which is an instant cast heal with a potency of 15,000. It costs 2500 MP, which essentially means that it only has 4 uses at most at any given time. Also, it is untargetable, so you can only heal yourself with it. Third, we have the standard issue Elixir. This elixir has a 4.5 second cast, with a 5 second cooldown, but when used it restores all of your health and mana. Be warned though, taking any damage while casting will cause it to be interrupted. Now on to Purify. Purify also has a 30-second cooldown and removes stun, heavy, bind, silence, half asleep, sweep, and deep freeze, and can be used while under any of those conditions. Also, when Purify removes one of those debuffs, it grants you resilience, which removes and prevents those same debuffs from being applied to you for 5 seconds. Lastly, we have Sprint, which unlike its PvE counterpart, lasts until it's cancelled by using Sprint again or using any other action. Sprint can be used while in combat as a way to help you escape or to catch a fleeing opponent. Now I should mention Swift Sprint here, even though it's not technically a usable ability. At the start of every match, you will have a buff called Swift Sprint. Like the name implies, it is faster than your normal sprint, but it only lasts for 5 seconds when you leave your spawn area, or as long as you are on a speed road in Palestra or Volcanic Heart. If you die, you can gain Swift Sprint again depending on where the crystal currently is. If the crystal is between your enemy's goal and your team's halfway mark, you'll gain Swift Sprint upon resurrecting to help you get back in the game. If the crystal is between your team's halfway mark and your team's goal, you will not gain Swift Sprint upon resurrection. Also, at no point on Cloud 9 will you get Swift Sprint. Before we get into the ranking and rewards, let's go through some general tips. Tip number 1. Stick with your team. I know sometimes it's fun or even useful to go chasing down an enemy, but trying to stick with your team is going to be the better option in most cases. Tip number 2. Don't try to solo the other team. Building off tip 1, while there are exceptions, for the most part you're not going to 1v5 the enemy team, so unless the enemy team is about to win, it's better to back off and wait for your team. Tip number 3. Coordinate with your team. I do understand that this can be difficult with only access to quick chat and target markers. But this is a team game, so marking targets and focusing one target down together, or waiting for other team members to have their limit breaks and using them together is often more effective than you all fighting different targets and using your limit breaks as they become available. Tip number 4. Mark one target at a time. Now you may think, marking multiple targets will make things easier to coordinate, and in a lot of PvP games you'd be right. That's not the case here. The only way teams can communicate is through very basic pre-made chats, so having multiple marked targets doesn't help in determining who the current focus target is. Your best bet is to mark one focus target, and when that target dies, mark the next focus target, which can easily be done with macros. Tip number 5. Keep your head on a swivel. You don't need to keep a constant eye on the crystal, but try not to get so focused on the fight that you allow the other team to move it while your entire team is occupied. Also, all 3 maps have alternate routes to most locations, so it's possible for the other team to flank you if you aren't paying enough attention. Tip number 6. Effective guarding. During regulation, if you're the only person on your team up and the enemy is about to win, don't just run headfirst into the circle. Hide around a corner or do whatever you can to prevent them from being able to hit you while being between them and your goal. Once that is no longer an option, use guard and recuperate as necessary to try to stay alive long enough for help to arrive. Tip number 7. Overtime means be on the crystal. Once overtime starts, if you're on the team that needs to push to win, it doesn't matter if you're ranged, healer, whatever, you need to be on the crystal at all times. If you are on the team that just needs to gain control of the crystal to win, killing the other team is not necessary. Any way you can remove them from the circle works, whether that be pulling, pushing, killing, or just preventing them from getting back to it. Tip number 8. Run if you need to. If you're low on health or mana, run away and get out of line of sight of the enemy team and use your standard issue elixir. It's better for you to be out of combat for 5 to 7 seconds than it is for you to die and be out of combat for 10 plus seconds. Tip number 9. Stage hazards. Use the stage hazards of Volcanic Heart and Cloud 9 to your advantage. This doesn't just mean getting the buffs when you can, but catching them with a silence or a stun at the right time so they can't mitigate or prevent being hit by the AoEs or thrown into the air is a good way to do serious damage for little effort. On Volcanic Heart, pushing, pulling, or crowd controlling them at the right time can also lead to them being hit by the AoEs. Just try to make sure you don't get yourself caught in them in the process. In addition to the 3 maps, there are 3 modes in which you can play Crystalline Conflict. The Custom Match, which requires a party of 10 players and pits the 10 of you against each other. The Casual Match, which puts 2 random teams of 5 players against each other for a no-stakes match. And finally, the Ranked Match, which also puts 2 random teams of players against each other, but with ranking stars on the line. When it comes to ranked play, there are several tiers players can be in. bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, or crystal. When you first start playing ranked, you'll be unranked until you get your first win, at which time you'll enter the bronze tier at bronze 3 with a single star. For every subsequent win, you'll gain another star. If you manage to win 3 matches in a row, you'll get a streak bonus and gain 2 stars, and you'll continue to earn 2 stars for each win as long as that streak continues. If you lose a match, you lose a star, and you can only ever lose 1 star at a time. Starting in bronze 3, to progress up the ranks, you need to earn 3 stars, and then the next star will move you into bronze 2. Continue winning stars to move into bronze 1, and then the silver tier. You can move from bronze 3 to bronze 1, and bronze 1 to bronze 3 as you gain and lose stars, but once you enter the silver tier, you cannot be ranked down into bronze. This applies to all tiers. Once you enter that tier, you can only enter the next tier, but you can move anywhere within that tier while you are within it. Once you get to the crystal tier, however, things change. In crystal, you will no longer gain or lose stars. Instead, you'll gain credit for every win and lose it for every loss, and it is no longer possible to get a streak bonus. Now let's go over matchmaking. The way the matchmaking works is that your team will consist of players in your tier and above or below it. If you are in silver, you can have players from bronze or gold, but not both. This applies to all tiers, and in the case of bronze and crystal being the bookends, bronze can be paired with silver, and crystal can be paired with diamond. Also take note that PvP ranks will be reset with each season, and the current plan is to have 2 seasons per patch. And now on to the moment everyone has been waiting for, the rewards. Please take note that these rewards are for Series 1 and Season 1. Available rewards in the future will most likely be different. That said, let's start with the ranked exclusive rewards. The link to this page will be in the description below, but as you can see, the top 100 players on each data center will get a unique Framers Kit for their adventure plate and a large amount of trophy crystals. Players in each tier will also receive a Framers Kit for the corresponding tier they are in. And that's it for the ranked season rewards. Now on to series rewards. The current plan is to have 1 series per patch, each series being like a battle pass reward type system. Once the series ends, these rewards will be available on a vendor for trophy crystals during the next series, and then will be gone in the series following that. During each series, you will gain Series XP for participating in PvP content. Gain enough Series XP, and you'll level up and be able to claim the reward for that level. Most levels award trophy crystals, but every 5 levels is a special reward. These rewards range from emotes to framers kits to fashion accessories to glamour sets. The trophy crystals, in addition to being able to buy these special rewards during the next series, can be used to buy items from the Crystal Quartermaster in the Wolf's Den. Things you can buy there range from weapons to armor to framers kits and orchestrion rolls. And with that, we've come to the end of the video. I know it was a long one, but I hope you got some useful information out of it. If you liked this video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing, and until next time, flame on, my friends.